Hey everyone, acute back pain can be quite a debilitating condition, and a lot of us will go through back pain at some point in our lives. Now, it can affect mood, daily function and activities, and make life quite uncomfortable at the time. So I'm going to show you guys some exercises and movements that you can go through whether your back pain is fresh and acute and quite irritable, or whether it's moved into that more subacute phase as it's recovering. So have a look at some of these exercises and try them out. Let me know what you think. So the first exercise we're going to look at is our knee to chest movement. So what we're going to do is we're going to start down on our back, get into a comfortable position, and then we're going to bring knees to chest. And so we can either hold this position. If it's uncomfortable, wait for discomfort to subside, or we can work through a rocking motion back and forth. So knees to chest. So whether you work through about 10 repetitions of rocking the knees, or we just maintain some lumbar flexion and lie here with our knees to chest. Next one we're going to do is our knee rocking side to side. So simple, just like our knee to chest. We're going to start in our position here on the ground. We're going to bring knees up and rock to the side. So we can use arms for a bit of support. Now, if it's uncomfortable to bring the feet off the ground, we're going to start with feet on the ground. And again, rocking side to side, just within a tolerable range. So if it's painful to push too far, don't go into pain, just working through that tolerable range. So just rocking knees side to side. And again, you might work through about 10 repetitions of that before you move on to the next exercise. The next one we're going to do is a hamstring stretch or a straight leg raise movement. And I'm going to use a strap here, so you can use a yoga strap, you can use a towel, you can use a rope, anything that you can use to hook around the bottom of the foot and bring the foot or leg up into flexion. So I'm going to start with the band around the foot. We're going to lay down into our upright position. So from there we're going to take our foot just one side at a time. We can use the other knee in a bent position or hip and knee bent. And then we're going to bring that leg up just to wherever's comfortable. And we're going to work through a little bit of a stretch through the back of the leg. So if you feel a bit of a neural stretch, that's because we're placing our sciatic nerve on a little bit of a stretch. If it's not comfortable to go up that high, then just work within a tolerable range. And whether you gently push back and forth through that range of stretch, you can increase that by bringing the toes towards you. So all we're doing is taking that leg up until we get a stretch. Now we can hold that stretch anywhere up to 30 seconds or more, or if it's uncomfortable to hold for a long period, then you can just do short periods of stretch and back off. When you're done with that side, so let's say we do about 30 to 60 seconds of stretching, we can move to the opposite side and we can bring that one up into stretch. So same thing, just working to comfort, not pushing into pain, and just gently taking that lower limb into stretch. So we're moving that sciatic nerve, but also stretching some of that soft tissue. The next one we're going to work through, I like to call happy dogs, and you'll see why. So what we're going to do is get into all fours, into this position. So for acute back pain, this can be a comfortable position to get into. We're going to have our feet come off the ground and work side to side. So we're getting side bending through that low back, just like you've got a dog wagging its tail. So a side to side motion, and you might work through 10 to 20 repetitions. You might go for a minute, but just alternating left and right, back and forth, side to side, getting some side bending movement through that low back. Our next exercise is called open books. So what we're going to do for this one is lay on our side. We're going to have knees and hips bent to about 90 degrees. Hands out in front of us or arms out straight, And we're going to use the top arm to rotate backwards to bring this shoulder and arm onto the ground. So within tolerable limits, don't push into pain if you get pain with rotation. But aiming to get that arm and shoulder back, and we can keep it there in a stretch for 30 to 60 seconds, or we can alternate going back and forth. So we're aiming to look over that shoulder with each rotation and taking that shoulder and arm down toward the ground. So we should feel a rotation stretch through the trunk with that rotation. And then we can go, after about 10 to 12 of those, onto the other side and do the same thing. Next movement we're going to work through is our hip hinge movement. So what we're aiming to do here is bend forwards as far as comfortable, using more of the hip motion than using our low back. So obviously when we do bend forwards, we are going to use a component of the low back, but we should also be using the hips when bending forward. So the hips and low back, or our lumbopelvic region, should be working together. So to do this, what we want to aim for is to be able to use the hips first to engage that bend. So it's all hip, bottom backwards, and moving forwards with a small amount of movement in that low back. And a way that you can train yourself to do it, or at least to have some feedback, is to use a broom or a mop or a dowel. We're going to place it at the back. So I've got tailbone in contact, my mid back in contact, and my head in contact. So from this point, I should be able to, with my hand here holding that stick, hand behind the head holding the stick, I should be able to bend forwards without the stick leaving those points of contact. So if I was to, you're allowed your knees to bend as well with this one. So if I was to bend forwards, I can maintain tailbone, mid back and head against that stick as I bend. So we're hinging from the hips. So that's our hip hinge movement. So without the stick, I can then still work through that range using the hips and pushing the hips backwards. So when the back pain is acute, you may find that you can still move around and perform activities with comfort and still get things done if it's a little too acute for you to start bending forwards yet. So the hip hinge, all at the hips. Again, it doesn't matter if the knees are bending, we're just focusing on our hip movement. Now what we don't want to see when we're using that dowel or mop or broomstick is when you bend forwards, the low back takes most of that load or that bend, and we're getting that stick moving away from that tailbone. So if you're getting the stick moving away, you know that you're not using those hips as much as you can. Now this will be tricky initially, so practicing it makes it easier and easier, and then you'll find that the looser and more mobile your hips get, the less strain it feels like you're putting through your low back. So once again, tailbone, mid back, and back of the head, and you should be able to move through different ranges using your hips as opposed to using your back. So that's our hip hinge movement. So there you go, some exercises to try and manage or reduce that acute or persisting low back pain. If you're getting any severe symptoms or anything you're unsure of, obviously contact your local health practitioner or medical practitioner. Otherwise, give these a go, try them each day, even a couple of times a day. Let me know what you think.